Okay, here's the one piece in 31 Thoughts on Sportsnet.ca that really caught my eye and had me texting teams this morning as I read it. Thought 11. Here's one for you, an amateur scout said. Can you find the NHL team that had Pettersson number 1 on its draft board? That, of course, the Vancouver Canucks, Elias Pettersson, who went 5th overall in 2017. Nico Hischier and Nolan Patrick went 1-2. So I texted some teams, and 2 came back to me. One said, we didn't have him number 1, but he was high. The other team said, we didn't have him quite at number 1, but he was number 1 amongst Europeans for us. Those are the only 2 teams that got back to me.
So, first of all, I figured I better put some Pettersson content in the blog because everybody was going gaga over him. And it was funny. Like, guys were texting me back, oh, Hall of Fame? Like, you're putting him in the Hall of Fame already? I go, no, I need some content because this is clearly a big story in the country. And, you know, the guy's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
I haven't asked them, but I would be curious to know if Nashville would be that team. They drafted his brother. And so they would certainly have some insight into him. Other than that, I'm not positive yet as to who that team is. But the one thing that really, you know what's interesting about it, Jeff, is that in Vancouver, they've already started using the Gretzky comparison a bit. Like, he's like Gretzky. And in the conversations I had with some teams about him, they almost wanted to say it, but they didn't want to say it. And the only reason they were bringing up Gretzky as a comparison is because he's not a overly powerful guy. He's wispy. He's slight.
Yep.
And if he's going to be successful, and he's a chance to be really successful, he's going to have to be that way, a dominant player, even though he's not physically built to be a dominant player. And that's the comparison that they were making. I was really curious about this. One guy said to me, if he does what Hischier does, comes to North America and plays a year, is he the number one overall pick?
Because, Nico Hischier came in and played with the Halifax Mooseheads
for a season.
For the one season.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting about Hischier, just as an aside, I talked to someone in the Halifax organization, and this was at the Quebec League Awards that I hosted with Louis Jean. And I said, you know, where do you, because, you know, Halifax has been the prospect factory, you know, Nathan McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin, Timo Meier, like, right, Nick Ehlers, like, they've had some, like, high-end NHL guys come out of Halifax. And I said, where would you put Nico Hischier? Skill set. And he said, honestly, I'd put him top. He said, over all those guys, he said, yep. And he said, here's why. You know, McKinnon had Drouin to play with, Ehlers had Drouin, like, all these other players had other players to play with. Nico Hischier did all of that on the youngest team, not just in the Q, but the entire CHL. He did it as an import coming over, and everybody in the Q tested him. Slash, punch, trip, hack, all of it. And he kept getting better as the season wore on. He said, you talk to hockey guys around the team that have seen all the guys go through Halifax, and the honest ones will tell you, Hischier's probably the best.
Wow, that's
big,
quite
that's
the praise.
Huge praise for Nico. But I don't disagree. You know, and not that you necessarily have to come over. Like, listen, Rasmus Dahlin didn't come over. He still went first overall to the Buffalo Sabres. But that was another curious line in 31 Thoughts this week. That, you know, what happens if Pettersson doesn't stay in Sweden, but rather chooses to play in the CHL?
This guy said he probably goes 1.
I remember that draft so well. I remember the smile on everyone's face in Vancouver when they were going up on the stage.
Well, I watched the video last night as I was writing. The Canucks post their draft videos, and so it's clear that they're talking to Vegas. And you know, obviously that draft goes Hischier 1, it goes Patrick 2, it goes Heiskanen 3, it goes Cale Makar 4.
Yep.
And so Vancouver, before the draft starts, they're pretty confident they're getting their guy, and they talk about flipping their pick with Vegas, where Vegas can go up to 5 and Vancouver goes to 6 and they still get their guy. And someone in Vegas told me that they knew what Vancouver was up to, that's what they were going to do, and they didn't want to give them an extra pick for it. Why bother? But the Canucks were worried about number 7, Rangers, who took Elias Anderson, and they felt that if the Rangers got in front of them, they would have taken Pettersson. So maybe the Rangers is the team. I'm not sure.
So I wonder who Vegas would have been interested, because I mean they ended up taking Cody Glass.
Maybe they take him anyway.
But if they knew that Vancouver was going to take Pettersson,
well, that's why they rejected the deal, right?
Oh, I see.
They
Okay,
said,
right.
They said that's why they rejected the deal. Now, there is somebody who told me that there was a chance that someone almost snuck in there and got Pettersson ahead of Vancouver. That there was almost, that somebody almost did it. And that...
Well, it's either going to be Colorado, Dallas, or Philadelphia. New Jersey was taken Hischier.
Now, I don't know the answer to this question yet. I'm looking into it to see if it was somebody there. But there is someone who said that there was almost a steal.
See, Dallas needed two things, defensemen and centers. Could it have been Dallas? They ended up taking Miro Heiskanen.
Well, the only thing
Heiskanen, as they're calling him now.
Yeah, the only thing I could possibly think of, and this just came to me right now, is that there was talk about Vancouver and Dallas swapping picks, right? I don't know how serious it was. There were rumors at the time about Tanev and things like that. I don't know how serious it was, but I am going to, it's something you kind of have to... I'm going to
No, this is good because now
into.
I've got a million texts out about
Yes.
about Pettersson and going back to the 2017 draft, and all of a sudden now some interesting stuff will probably come back.
Yes, it always takes a year or two.
Now that
to
we're
come
far
out.
enough removed from that draft, it's like, oh, here's where we would have
So I got
gone.
to find out about all this stuff because they said that the Vancouver there is a storyline there that says, like one guy says to me, whenever one of these guys comes on and goes boom, like Pettersson has. There's so much revisionist history that comes out about who did what and who thought what.
It usually takes them out. It was about a year after.
Yes.
I remember talking to someone in Boston. I said, if you guys didn't take Charlie McAvoy in that spot, what would you have done? He goes, Dante Fabro. Right away. We're taking Dante. It was between the two of us, two of them. So I think it'd be Charlie McAvoy or Dante Fabro in Boston.
I know Detroit, the year they took Dylan Larkin, it was Dylan Larkin or David Pasternak. And Pasternak went, I think, 10 picks later. But he was the other guy if it wasn't Larkin. But anyway, there is some...
Just as an aside to I love these conversations that just have a million asides.
They're fantastic.
The thing about the Dylan Larkin pick that really burned me as someone that follows junior hockey and loves junior hockey and covers the CHL, I remember that draft. That was Philadelphia draft.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, okay, there's two teams I don't want Dylan Larkin to go to. One is Minnesota and one is Detroit. You know why?
Why?
Because those were
you hate them?
No, those were the two.
No, I'm going to spread that rumor that you hate them.
Okay, that's good. Those were the two teams that probably would have said, yeah, go to Michigan. Now, do you know who had Dylan Larkin's rights in the CHL?
I don't remember.
The Erie Otters.
Okay.
Think about Dylan Larkin
so he would have
playing
been there
with Connor
with
McDavid.
Right, okay.
And I asked McDavid about it. We were doing an event at the Rogers Center, and this is on tape somewhere. I said, have you ever talked to Larkin about it? He goes, oh, yeah, we've talked about it before. Like, come on, man, you got to come. Don't go to University of Michigan. Come to Erie. We'll destroy the OHL, set a ton of new records, and off we go to the Memorial Cup. He goes, yeah, we talked about it before. Just the idea of those two speedsters in the OHL together, Dylan Larkin and Connor McDavid. Cap estimates.
Yeah.
81.4 to 85.4 if the escalator is used.
Fully used.
If I am the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm saying hallelujah. Give me more room.
Well, I think almost everybody would say that.
But that's the team that's facing the obvious crunch.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, like, I get the sense, Jeff, that Toronto's looking at a situation where maybe some of these become 6-year deals now instead of 8s. And I'm curious to see if that becomes their way of doing it. You know, the second contracts for Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Patrick Kane, and Jonathan Toews were all 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think Toronto's going to do 5 years for Nylander because that comes right to unrestricted free agency. But I wonder if in some of these situations, the number 5 or 6 becomes the solution.
You think it happens that way?
It's, I'll be honest. If I was the Leafs, I'd be going to try to get Matthews down at 8 times 12.
Does it not get more dangerous for Toronto if December 1st comes and goes and no Nylander? Because then you have to do it with 3 next year, not just 2.
Yeah, I think that's always a factor. I think they know exactly what they're going to get into, but like I said, if I'm Toronto, I'm doing Matthews 8 times 12, and I'll see what happens.